Hello, 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 and welcome. Welcome back to another YouTube and Facebook Live. I'm so excited to have Manny here in Black and Queer Divinity. We're going to be having such a great conversation. I'm excited. And so let me just, Manny Mac is a queer sex coach and trans deity. And Manny goes by the pronouns he and they. He helps Black and queer folks reclaim their divinity so they can blow up the shackles of religious oppression. So I am so excited. And I love that. Like, I love that your work is all about helping people blow up the shackles of religious oppression. Because a lot of my work as well is about really helping to get rid of the stigma and the shame. And we need to talk about sexuality. We need to talk about relationships. We need to talk about gender, right? And so I'm so happy to have you on here because, as my work, I'm a psychotherapy background, psychology background, and I work as a tantra therapist. And Tantra, it's still fairly new. Like I've been working with this the last 6 years, right? And so a lot of my learning of Tantra has been about traditional couples, a traditional, cis man, cis woman. And more that I started working, I'm like, well, we have all different types of relationships, right? And so there's other ways that this can work. And I started changing and doing a variety. And so this is just a great opportunity for me to continue to grow and learn, as well as my viewers, the people who come on and watching. I see people coming on and watching. Say hello. Let us know that you're here. So glad people are coming on. Say hello. And those of you who know me, who's been on, if you have any questions, feel free to ask. You don't have to be shy. This is your opportunity to learn and have questions asked. And this is also important, even for those of you who are on here and you may not consider yourself queer or trans. Maybe you might have a child one day. Maybe you get into a relationship and you have a child, and your child may be queer or trans. So I think that this is information that all of us need to learn and understand, and not only if we have children, but so that we can relate to our friends, our family, our co-workers, or different people, right? Because gender is just so fluid. It's so much more vast than we really ever hear and talk about. So hello, Reviving Venus. Reviving Venus said hello, Manny. So awesome. So yeah. So again, those who else, thank you, Manny. Thank you, Reviving Venus, for saying hello. Other people are coming on, say hello. If you're totally new to this topic, let us know. Hey, Danny. If you're totally new to this that topic, say I'm new, I'm learning, I'm interested. Let us know. If you know some stuff, let us know. I also like to hear from you as well. Anyone else who have firsthand experience in what we're going to be talking about. So, Manny, you go by he and they. So, tell me first. What do you mean by they? What is they? For those who don't understand this, because I've had conversations with people who are like he, she, they. Like I don't understand. So, what does that mean first and foremost?
Mm. Well, hello everyone. Um, for me, my pronouns have developed over time, and it's definitely taken a while to arrive at them. Specifically, the term they has fit so well for me when it comes to attempting to describe like the ancestral as well as the life force energy that feels larger than any gender, that feels deeper, that feels bigger. And I've had such a hard time fully encapsulating what it is.
Mm,
It reminds me of like the ocean, and
hmm.
how for me the ocean is feminine but masculine but genderless because it carries the souls of our ancestors. And so um, that's how I feel about my gender, and it doesn't quite fit to a she or he position all the time. So that's why I also use they.
Oh, that is so beautiful. I love that analogy of the ocean, right? Like the ocean is so feminine, yet masculine, but doesn't take on, you know, any one thing, and it's so vast, And so, wow, that's beautiful, beautifully stated. And so you've been going through this process for a while, like trying to understand yourself, trying to understand your sexuality. What was childhood like?
Childhood was very religious, oppressive in a lot of ways, shameful in a lot of ways, um, where queerness was positioned as um, demonization, as wrong in every possible way. Simple things that heterosexual folks would do, if I were to do the same thing, I would be considered like a demon. Like it was just like horrifying. And I was in denial for a really, really long time because being queer seemed like the worst possible thing that you could be, even worse than like actual heinous crimes.
Hmm.
So that was incredibly difficult to work through growing up. And thankfully, I did go to therapy at some point because there was just no one to process it with. Everyone was just like in this illusion, not even a, well, yeah, in this illusion or this idea that I was being delusional
Hmm.
because Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life, and that's
Hmm.
it, and that's all. We don't want to hear anything else. And um, yeah, especially around spirituality, just because for a long time I just was like not into religion, and I couldn't really voice that because I mean, my household is very Christian. It is very much like this is the only option. So even though I was interested in like crystals and chakras and different things, like I was also terrified that like I would get in trouble or like something bad would happen if I actually expressed interest in that. And then even with like clothing, my mom always told me like if you don't dress more girly, then people are gonna start to think that you're a lesbian. And I was like, I don't care what people think. And my
Hmm.
mom said, well, when I say people, I mean me.
Hmm.
So it was tough. And then when it comes to gender, like gender roles, like for a long time we didn't necessarily have them growing up because there were just primarily girls in the house. There was like 2 to 3 guys. I grew up in a really, really large family. It wasn't a biological family, but just lots of folks. And so eventually it was just me, my mom, my brother. And when it was the three of us, gender roles became very like prevalent in our household. And that was like end all be all. If you're a girl, you wash the dishes. You're a boy, you take the trash out type deal.
Hmm.
And it's always felt so limiting. And people have always sort of made fun of my brother because he's more sensitive. He's more like um, feminine, and I was more masculine. And it's just the labels are so just like
Hmm.
it's like funny but weird, and also just like uncomfortable because it's just not a full encapsulation of who we are. It's just that like my brother should be allowed to cry because
Hmm.
he's a boy. Like that doesn't mean that he doesn't have the right to. But that was just like what was pushed on us, what was forced on us. So um, yeah, I feel like that was like
No, but that was beautiful. That was amazing because and I could relate, and I'm sure that so many people can relate. Growing up for me, I've always had a lot of masculine energy, way more than feminine energy, right? And as a child, you don't know how to, like. I mean, I don't know, like I just was who I was and who I am. I never liked wearing dresses. I never liked wearing skirts. I never liked doing my hair. So now this is like freedom, such freedom.
Yeah.
And and so similar, I would wear a lot of black, like always wearing black and pants, baseball cap. And my mom would be like, what's wrong with you? You need to wear more dresses or more colors. Why are you just wearing black? Like, are you like, this is a depressive state? Are you going to a funeral? Like, you're mourning or something? Like, she just didn't understand it. But like, that's just what I like. Like, that was what I wanted to wear, and that was my expression of myself. And and in this society, for boys growing up, like you said, they're not allowed to cry, because then people will be like, oh, you're a bitch, like they'll say. And they're like, oh, and then they'll just tease them. And then a lot of times parents will try to raise them to be tough and strong and not show emotions, and that begins to have cause problems later down the years in relationships, right? I mean, even just relationships within yourself, but also relationships with your partner, whoever you're in a relationship with, because you don't know how to express yourself. You don't know how to be true and to yourself. And you talked about a good thing that you went to therapy, and I think that it's an amazing thing that therapy has come so far along, because before it used to be in the DSM. Like, if you were gay, you're homosexual, that was a disorder. There was something wrong with that. So not only in religion, but even in therapy. So it's like, how is that? Like, how is that? And I've always felt like, if you're born, you like, people are born this way. You can't, there can't be something wrong. Like, I remember, and even now, I'll see little kids who are like 10 years old, who might be in a male body, but they're very effeminate, and or you can tell right away. There's a lot of times you're like, oh, you can tell this person likes the same sex, or they're going to when they get older. So it's something that's so innate in us, and I feel like, first of all, I do believe in God, and I do believe in Jesus Christ, but I am not religious. I am spiritual, and I feel like there's so many things when just like from what you were talking, all of this oppression with sexuality, and it's like, for me, God is a loving God. Jesus was a loving, this like, what do you call that, prophet or whatever. It wasn't about hate. I mean, he was accepting of prostitutes. I mean, people walking with him and around him. And God wouldn't say, you're this way, so I don't love you anymore, or you're this way, so you're condemned to hell. I don't believe that. I don't believe that. And so, I definitely believe it's important that we start taking away these labels of, this person has to be this way, this person has to be this way. If you're born in a female body, then that means you have to be sensitive. You have to be able to cook and clean and wear heels. Or if you're born in a male body, you got to be tough, and you have to support and do all the hard work and everything. Now, I'm not feminist. I'm going to say I'm not a feminist, but at the same time, I feel like um, people have to be able to choose if they want, if that traditional role feels true to them, or if it doesn't. You know, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does totally make sense. And yeah, there's so much variety, so much variety in the way that we reincarnate. Um,
Hmm.
I know for me, a very long time, I used to feel like my queerness was wrong, and it like there should be someone to blame, and like there should be something to blame, because why did I end up this way? And what I started to recognize that, and I think a lot of people carry the belief that sexual assault and sexual abuse is the reason why people become queer, um, which it's not the case. So this is just how we reincarnate. This is just who we are,
Hmm.
and it's a discovery more than a uh, decision. So
Mhm.
people fall into different ideas about what does this mean, and like why it's here and stuff. But yeah. Also, just did want to add that yeah, sometimes when we're growing up and we're expressing ourselves, um, we we may express more feminine um, while being born in a masculine body and still grow up to be heterosexual.
Mhm.
And there's so much nuance. There's so much nuance in it. Some of my One of my favorite tip talkers is a femboy, but is heterosexual, and he always makes these jokes about how when he would visit his girlfriend's house, he would be dressed very femme, and so the parents would assume like, oh, he's gay, like whatever. But that was his girlfriend, and like, and they get to fool around and everything without the parent knowing. And I just thought that was absolutely hilarious.
So hilarious. That makes me think of show Three's Company. And I'm
Mm.
dating back. I'm telling my age, but I used to watch Three's Company,
Yeah.
and it was like this guy who wanted to have roommates, be roommates with these two girls. And back
Mm.
then, it was like, oh, a guy with two girls, so he had to pretend that he was gay, and he would be very, feminine and stuff like that. So Mr.
Yeah.
Roper would think that he was gay and let him live with these two women. Oh
Oh
my
wow.
God.
I love it.
uh, Boy, the things you have to go through, man. Like
Mm.
it's yeah, it's so crazy. So, um, guys, as you're coming on, if you have any questions, ask. Feel free to type it in on Facebook or YouTube, or even just say hello. Let us know you're here. Um, if anyone, if you can relate to anything that's being said, say this resonates with me, or you know, anything, let us know. This keeps it fun when I get comments and I see people talking as well. So, um, yeah, so that's so yeah, so that's so interesting. So let's see. I wrote down a bunch of questions here, which I don't normally do. So I'm kind of looking. Usually I just go with the flow, but this is just so challenging. And you might have answered this, but what has been your biggest challenge? Well, first, okay, yeah. What has been your biggest challenge?
Uh, my biggest challenge has been seeing myself in my wholeness.
Hmm.
Um, and I think that's something that I finally have now. But yeah, I just always felt like broken pieces, and like sometimes I felt like my blackness was over here, my queerness was over here, and then somewhere between is sexuality and spirituality. But starting to recognize that they all intersect and that they all have something to do with each other has been the hardest, but also the most rewarding experience. Um, and definitely decolonization has been super helpful in that experience of just recognizing that um, like who I am doesn't have to look like what society said it had to be. I forget who says this quote, but I think it kind of goes like um, being yourself is the hardest and most rewarding experience as a human.
Hmm.
And I was just like, yeah, like it is hard and it's rewarding. I mean, there's so many masks and layers to shed, and then like just to understand who we are and actually be comfortable in the vessel that we have. So yeah, that's been challenging just to like be in my body as a trans person, as a black person, as a spiritual, polyamorous, womanist, um, and at the same time, because sometimes my adjacents and my love of women makes people think that I am one, and because I look like this, like because I carry an aesthetic that and a schema that people associate with womanhood and femininity. Um, yeah, a lot of people assume that I want to be referred to as a woman or ma'am or goddess or any of those terms, which are beautiful but just don't belong to me. So um, the constant misgendering is really really tough, and folks not recognizing that it's a microaggression and
Say
just
that
sort
again,
of
please.
yeah, folks not recognizing that misgendering someone is a microaggression. Um, People kind of act like sometimes they act like, oh, it's not that big of a deal, or they'll try to convince you that you are um, making too much of this and sort of make it seem like you're taking up too much space, um,
Mm-hmm.
which is something like for me, if someone when someone sort of insinuates that you're taking up space, taking up too much space, it's a time to take up more space, because they're trying to silence you and yeah, oppress you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Man, this is so much. I gotta like try to remember. Like as you were talking, I had so many questions that was coming up. I was like, let me get a pen and write. But like, oh man, you said something I wanted to ask a question about, but okay, let me just well, let me ask this. What can people do to not assume like, well, okay, so people, so we naturally it's just natural, it's just instinctive because of how we've been raised, right? You see someone who looks like you, right? And so we're like, hey, girl, what's up? So what do you recommend that the person does as opposed to just like assuming, hey, like,
Absolutely. So if you're like leading a group and you're like believing that this is an all woman group and you're like, oh, hey, ladies,
Mhm.
there's this like aspect of not all of us identify that way. And so, yeah, greetings to me are pretty simple, like, or can be, right? So,
Mhm.
you could say something like, hello, everyone. Like, that one's like a really good one.
Mhm.
Or, like, if you want to do something sweet, hello, loves, right? Or,
Okay.
um, divine beings. I also love like royal deities, sovereign beings, things like
Mhm.
that for the more spiritual spaces. Um, but yeah, that's what I would say if you're like leading a group, if you're talking to someone one on one.
Mhm.
I would go with love. That's very simple. Hi, love.
Yeah.
It's not gendered in any kind of way. Um, I would say sweetie. It's debatable. That's gendered for me.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, some of them for me are feminine leaning, but
Mhm.
like I'm okay with like baby, not so much of like darling, just because it just sounds a
Yeah.
little 1950s. But but yeah, I mean, and when you're like close with someone, you can always ask like what makes them feel comfortable specifically because
Mhm.
we're all different. But yeah,
And I like that you say that when you're close to someone, you can ask. Because also a lot of times, when you're going through this, like you get bombarded with all these questions, and a lot of times you don't want people to keep asking you all these questions. You want people to go and do the research.
yeah.
So I also want to be sensitive because I know I'm asking you a lot of questions, and you're probably used to people asking questions, and you probably get tired of it. Um,
Mm, I'm open to that. I mean, this is the space. I'm ready.
yes.
Whatever questions.
Okay. Awesome. And yes, this is the space, and I think in general, like, and this is why I want to have it where people can just ask questions. So I see people on ask questions. People sometimes they don't know what to say, or sometimes they're just like, it's so much and they're listening.
Yeah.
Um, but there was something you had said, and it just came back to me. Um, when you're talking about needing to accept yourselves, because like you know, you so your sexual sexuality here, your spirituality here, your blackness here, you know. And one of the things in general that I like to work with my clients on is being able to accept themselves as a whole. And that's what healing and growth is all about, right? Is really accepting and loving all parts of you and working to bring that together, right? And so so many times, you know, my clients will struggle with how do we, you know, sexuality is here, spirituality is here, you know, but it's connected. Sexuality is a spiritual thing. We are spiritual beings, we are sexual beings. This is who we are, you know, and sexuality is very spiritual. When I'm doing tantric massages with clients, they're like, "Oh God, God." I'm like, "You see? Look at how close you're getting to God." and,
Yeah.
and when you orgasm, that's like one of the most spiritual states you can be in. You're in that you're in such a meditative state where there's nothing going on in your mind, and you're actually closest to God or the divine or universe, to yourself, your inner being, you know. So I'm glad you brought that up and you talked about that, because you know that is very important. And you know, when we go through and we see ourselves as different, but we're all different. There's no two people who are alike, right? And so um, we have to figure out how to be all inclusive, how to, and this is the step to being more inclusive, right? Having these conversations, having these difficult conversations. And a lot of times, because this is educating people, you know, there's so many different things that we just don't know, because we don't learn about these in school. We don't, in our sex ed class, we don't talk about all these different gender roles and how to address people and how to be sensitive. You know, we just didn't. I'm not in school now, so I don't know if they're starting to teach that in school. Maybe they're opening up. I don't know, but you know, they didn't when I was in school. you
Yeah. Oh,
know.
there's so much lacking in and then middle school sex education. They didn't even teach us consent, so definitely not anything around sexuality or gender or intimacy. Like, just it's lacking in literally every area, and especially the conversation around STDs and STIs. Like, that was not a conversation; it was a scare tactic. So,
Right.
yeah.
And we all know that scare tactics don't work, right? Like, but this is
Yeah.
our society. Our society is based on fear, right? When I say a society, not just in the US, I'm here in Brazil, but like all over. Religious is huge. We try to like scare people straight, right? That was even a term. Um, Scare people into following you and you know, believing what you think, or scare people into not having sex, or scare people into trying to be heterosexual. Like, I mean, that's what they use.
Absolutely. And I just did want to add to around, like, I think as of late, something that's been like sort of coming through my spirit is spirituality at the intersection of um, justice, and being justice centered in our work as opposed to inclusive. Because I think that corporate
Mm,
America has just really abused this term inclusive and kind of use it as a, well, as long as we have a multicultural statement, and as long as
true.
we we have a few black faces, we can say we're diverse and inclusive.
Hmm.
But it's not enough to be invited to the table. That actually has to be a safe space for us to be. So for me, the term that I want to see more is justice centered, and
Hmm.
I want to see policies that actually back it up. I want to see action that back it up as well, like, because we we've been dehumanized for so incredibly long,
Yes.
and it's just not enough to say we're to slap trans inclusive on a flyer. It's not enough to
Right.
to say BIPOC inclusive. Like,
True.
no, like people actually need to get trained and learn how to hold safe space for folks.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Um, Now I know you are a coach. Now, do you do that in your with your clients? Like, do you teach are all of your clients queer or trans, or do you also work with other populations and teach them?
I work with queer and trans folks. I am, the idea was just introduced to me recently. Um, and I was thinking of, well, like someone asked me, like, do you have something on this? And I was like, no, I've been thinking about it, but you know what? I am thinking that I will definitely have to do it now. It was just like an idea swirling, but I'm definitely wanting to create trainings in this area because people are not trans inclusive. They want to be, and they
Mm-hmm.
want the clout. They want it to look good and to be like, oh yeah, we accept trans folks. But when you get in the space, it's completely sorry, traffic.
Mm-hmm.
It's like completely cis normative, and they're using terms that actually marginalize trans folks even further. And then if they were to come up to you and ask you certain questions that are trans specific, like you wouldn't know what to say. I mean, maybe some folks are at least able to listen and to be kind and respectful to what this person is saying, which is what I would offer. Like, if you don't know, then just start there. Start by listening and being kind and respectful and not questioning.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's one thing to ask a question, and then it's another thing to kind of probe and to like ask a question in a way that makes them feel like they're wrong or like,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Like judgmental with their questions, like when they're asking questions is more like a judgmental thing as opposed to like really interest to have
Yeah,
a
absolutely. And we can feel the difference, and people kind of act
Mhm.
like you can't feel the difference, but it's super clear when someone is just like really listening and interested and want to hear from you, as opposed to just trying to hurt you and judge you and disrespect you.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. So, what are some of the things that people might say or do that has been offensive to you or people that you work with that that we could share here so people can know not to say this, not to do this. When you
Yeah,
know someone. Hmm.
I made this post. It was called for boys who get their periods, and I was just like sharing it. It was so beautiful, and it was just talking about some different ways that you can not feel like you're losing part of your masculinity while you're experiencing your period. And so, like, so one of the tips was don't wear boxers with pads because it just doesn't work.
Hmm.
Um,
Right.
Instead, um, use you'll wear like panties, but then put your boxers on top so that you
Hmm.
still can wear your boxers. Um, and so somebody put in the comments, y'all are delusional. And
Wow.
so, like, it kind of stung. It didn't really hurt, but I was just like,
Mhm.
okay, you can't be on my page. So, like, of course, I
Right.
like deleted them and blocked them immediately. But like, those are the things that happen. Sometimes I post about polyamory, and somebody would like drop a Bible verse. Like, polyamory wasn't in the Bible, which is ridiculous. We're just like,
Right. I mean, yeah. I mean, polyamory was actually the norm before monogamy. Like monogamy
yeah,
more for like business purposes and to help people kind of be able to grow and make money and stuff like that. Like, um,
yeah.
go
So
ahead.
those are the things that I see. So yeah, so definitely don't like give us Bible verses and try to like scare us into not being who we are, because it just like doesn't work.
Hmm.
Um, for the most part, it's just like not being an asshole. Like, most of it is really just like, don't be an asshole. Like,
Right. Right. True. True.
yeah.
True. Yeah. So I do want to get into the polyamory, but I want to ask another question first. What are some things that parents can do? Like, if your child comes to you and say, I'm confused, I'm not sure, I'm in this girl's body, but I feel more like a boy. Maybe, I'm not sure. Maybe I feel like, I just don't know. Like, what can parents do, and what shouldn't parents do?
Mm, okay, that's a tough spot for sure.
Yeah, that is.
So I know when I haven't come out as trans yet, but I've come out as queer. And when I came out as, well, I came out as pansexual specifically.
Hmm.
Um, and it was really hard. It was one of those spaces of like, please don't beat me, please don't kill me. Like, like, also please don't disown me and kick me out the house. Like, it was one of those scary ass moments where I was like, fuck. Which is why I literally waited about 30 minutes before my first date with a girl to say anything.
Yeah.
Um, so so my mom had these like probing questions that were incredibly painful. Even so, it made an incredibly hard thing to talk about even harder, um, because she was just like, "What is pansexual anyway?" And I was
Hmm.
like explaining it to her, and she was just like, "Well, how is that different from bisexual?"
Hmm.
It's like,
And you know what? I'm
I don't
actually,
know.
and I'm glad you're saying that. And I want you to continue. But I
Yeah,
actually just read a note to ask, what is pansexual? What is queer? And I'm asking because there are people who really just don't know, and they just don't
yeah.
understand. So continue with what you're saying, but then can you also go into at that, what is pansexual exactly? What is queer exactly? Um, in your words. So, people have heard me talk about it, but in your words, like, what would you say after you continue on what parents could do and don't do?
Okay,
So let
yeah.
me just say that first and then go into that.
Okay, 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 yeah.
So much and so much.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, so pansexual, my my relationship has, it's so interesting to even recognize I have a relationship with this term now, and as I have held it and it's been a part of my life, it's definitely evolved a lot. But as of right now, for me being pansexual, mm, it's it's so spiritual. It is so spiritual, and in this way that like whenever I am attracted to someone, I can't even fully like explain it. Like when folks are asking me like, "What's your type?" I don't necessarily have one. Like,
Mhm.
in this moment, like I'm really liking an ancestral vibe. Like
Mhm.
sometimes I can look at people and I feel like I can tell that they hold multitudes, and that's
Right.
attractive to me right now. So um, yeah, it's like this intuitive process of connecting with different people and their souls and their spirits, their hearts, that encompasses gender, but
Hmm.
it's not bound by gender.
Right.
Yeah.
And then bisexual.
Bisexual. Okay, so there are multiple definitions of bisexual,
Okay.
um, and based on person, based on folks' views of gender, um, and based on context. So the standard definition of bisexuality um, takes a heteronormative approach and a cisgender approach. So the
Hmm.
idea that you have an attraction to um, heterosexual, well, maybe not even heterosexual because they don't have to be heterosexual, but cisgender men and then cisgender women. So, like, that's one of the older definitions that a lot of people believe is like that's the definition. So then we have definition number two, which a lot of folks use is when you have an attraction to more multiple genders.
Mm-hmm.
right? So more than two is what a lot of folks will say. Um, and that could be any two genders. That could be any three genders, four genders, whatever the case. Um, and the last definition is like closer to pansexuality. So that's when you like the feminine spectrum and the masculine spectrum, and it doesn't necessarily matter what body those energies exist in.
Mm-hmm.
So those are the three definitions of bisexuality that I know of at this moment.
Okay. And queer?
Queer is a catch-all term, kind of
Mm-hmm.
like gay. Well, gay has two definitions, but so with queer, it's just like an umbrella term for literally all the things. You can be genderqueer, you can be sexually queer, and so essentially, a lot of times, like I'll use it as for sexually queer because like if I'm in a space where I don't really want to say I am a lesbian leaning scoliosexual, when because I know folks are going to look at me like, what are you
Right.
talking about? I'll just
Right.
say I'm queer so that
Mm-hmm.
it's easy and it's simple. Like you get the point that I'm not straight. So like that's what I use. And then you could also use it as genderqueer if you're referencing your gender, if it like fluctuates, if you're fluid, or if you fall underneath the trans or non-binary umbrella. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so queer is like it's a big term for everything,
Yes. Okay. Okay. So
and
going
just
back to
like
the question, mhm.
mhm,
So going back to the question now about what parents should do and not do, right?
yes. So yeah. So while I was like coming out to my mom, it was like absolutely terrifying, and she had lots of questions that I just didn't have answers to.
Mm-hmm.
And what I knew is that I wasn't straight.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's kind of like showing up to the first day of work, you know what your job is, and you might know a little bit about what you're doing, but you do not have like the rundown.
Mm-hmm.
And my
Right.
mom expected me to have the rundown, and I was just like, I don't fucking know, my bad. Like,
Right.
you know.
How
So
old
this,
were you?
I was 19.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And so it's like that with my transits as well. Like this is year three. This is year one of me being out, but this is year three of me being trans. And it's something that I grow with over time. But I don't have all the answers. I have a lot of answers now because I've been studying sex and gender for like 7 years. But
Mm-hmm.
at the time, I was like, I don't have all these answers. And
Right.
so what I would recommend is like don't pressure your kid into having tons of answers, even though like you have all these questions and you want to know, no, right now. Being queer is not it's not black and white. It's not
Mm-hmm.
a box. It's not a straight line in any sort of way. Like there is a ton of nuance, and
Yeah.
so it's really hard to give a flat out answer because this isn't heterosexuality.
Mm-hmm.
So definitely take your time, even though it's hard. Like when they first come out, they're not ready to answer 57,000 questions. They
Right.
don't have it. Um, what they know is how they feel,
Right.
and so ask them how they feel, and like be genuinely interested in their response. Um, and I think too, like there are just a lot of households that don't have emotional intimacy or emotional safety. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's why it's so hard to talk about these things in the first place. So just ensuring that the space is safe is really, really huge. Um, and if it's hard for you to accept when they tell you, then I think being honest is good, but being
Mm-hmm.
honest without lashing out and
Right.
without making them feel like they're small.
Right. Right. Ooh, okay, so we got like 5 minutes. And there's still so much more to ask. I want to get it, I wanna- but so you said, you talked about the third gender and the different genders. Can you explain that? Um, because I think that's obviously that's not so common, right? And so can you explain what do you mean by a third gender?
Yes. So the third gender is actually, so initially, and now the relationship that I've had with it was like I didn't know it was already a term. So before, when I was creating a relationship with this term, I was like, yeah, like for me, it's, I'm not necessarily boy or girl. I don't fit into those two genders. So maybe there's a third gender that I fit into. And I don't really know what that is, but I think that's the case. Now, years later, I understand that the third gender is an actual term and it is in reference to the indigenous community. So, closer to like two spirit, so pretty spiritual term. Um, and I do not know for like for sure if I have indigenous roots or not. So when I use the term, I do not use it in that particular way.
Okay.
Um, but yes, for me, it's just not fully identifying as a boy or girl.
Right. Okay. Okay. So, I want to get into polyamory, but we're not going to have any time. It just means I'm going to have you come back on again. But I want to thank you so much. For those of you who are watching, follow Manny. Manny, what is your Instagram account? Let's write that on here so
It
people can
is
follow you.
black, the letter N, queer, divinity.
So everybody follow Manny at Black and Queer Divinity. Do you have a website that you want to share
No,
or?
not yet.
Okay, that's why many people just use Instagram and social media. So awesome. So follow Manny at Black and Queer Divinity. If you are not following me, follow me as well. If you like the show, give it a thumbs up. If you're not subscribed to my channel, go ahead and subscribe. Share this, share this because people need to hear this. This was really, really good. And I want to thank you again, Manny, for coming on. Please follow Manny again at Black and Queer Divinity. This was so good. Like there was just so much information that I feel like is going to be so helpful. And I would love to do this again and go, into the polyamory, relationships, and dating and things like that. There's just, oh my God, there's just so much more we can go into. Um, and I love this. And so let me just share. Right now, I have my what do I have? I have my um, Imanja retreat coming up next year, February. It's actually going to be January 29th to February 5th in Brazil. So it is for those who identify as women of color to be there. And we're going to work on that goddess energy, the goddess Imanja energy, which is all about cleansing and healing. And as you said, it's that what it's that ocean energy, the ocean that's the feminine and the masculine and it's vast and you know so we're gonna work on that. We're gonna go through do some spiritual work, some healing work, and we're gonna be working on sexuality as well while we're there. January 29th to February 5th. That information is on my website, whether you go to www.prandharaprem.com or www.reneeadolphe.com. Um, I'm also on Facebook as Renee Adolphe, Instagram Prandhara Prem underscore Tantra. You can find me either Prandhara Prem or Renee Adolphe. You Google one of those, you're going to find either my website, my Instagram, or my Facebook. So what else? I have the Sacred Goddess Awakening Journal that is for sale now on Amazon. And it is great because there's a lot of different exercises in there for you to do, as well as to journal about them to connect more to your sexuality, to become more integrated, more whole, to understand yourself and accept yourself and learn about your body. So, I have some freestyling journaling in there. I have specific techniques, specific exercises, specific meditations that all deal with sexuality. So get that journal on Amazon.com. Let me write that down for you. It is called Sacred Goddess Awakening Journal on Amazon. So go ahead and look that up on Amazon. Also, let's see what else. Today's a full moon energy. So great time to release stuff, shake it off, shake what no longer serves you. I did a great little full moon ritual today. I need to share that on my social media. So I'll post that, show a little bit of that, what I did today. Also on my website, whether you go to Prandhara Prem or reneeadolphe.com, I do have an excellent meditation that's great for the full moon energy called Shake It Off. So the full moon is about releasing, and the Shake It Off meditation is specifically to release what you're holding on to, what no longer serves you. So this is a great time, that full moon energy, to do that. And I think that is all. So thank you, Manny. If there's anything you want to share, any last minute comments, feel free. Take it away.
Thank you so much for having me. This was so fun. I deeply appreciate it, and I'm excited to come back.
Yay! Thank you. Thank you. It'll be good. It's so good. There's so much more. Like, I swear, I feel like this could go on for 2, 3 hours. Well, thank you so much. Thank you, everyone who came on. Again, don't forget to hit the like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you can see when I have my next lives coming on. And don't forget to share this with someone. This could really make a difference. Thank you again so much, Manny. Have a good. Oh wait, where are you located? Because I love your background and what you're saying. Where are you?
I'm in Costa Rica.
Oh my God! Wait, do you live there?
No, I'm visiting.
Oh, you're visiting. Okay. Well, I'm like, you got the nature and like the kind of chair or kind of hammock you got. I'm like, you don't see that in the States. I was like, where are you? All right. Well, enjoy Costa Rica and thank you again. Have a great one. Bye,
Thank
everyone.
you.
All right. Thank you. Bye.